Check 1 2 1 2. All right, my friends, welcome back. I'm the Zim. This is the Zim video, and this is the Art Professors podcast. This is episode 34? We are at episode 34. Thanks everybody for joining. For those that don't know, I'm an art professor. I'm an artist and art professor. And first off, I want to say I'm in support of the anti-war protesters, the student protesters on the college campuses throughout our country. I'm in support of the divestment of Israel to stop the genocide that's happening, and we need that to happen. Free Palestine. Let's make it happen. So, which is a big deal, and I want to make sure that's stated. Which, off the top here, I'll also say, as an artist, I believe that art is inherently political. If you're making artwork, if you're saying to our society that you are an artist, no matter what type of art you make, you are making a political stance because you are saying that art is important. And in our society, we don't value the arts. There's so many. It's just one of the things that is not as valuable in our Western American society. And by you saying it is valuable, you're making a political stance. And so I encourage every artist to understand that and go, how then can I push this farther? How can I stand up for this important idea and push it? And you don't have to do it like I do it. I'm very on the nose with my work. I'm very much political oriented, activist oriented, in your face. We're talking about ideas, amplifying the messages of diversity and social justice and human rights and those kind of ideas. Very on the nose. But there are a lot of artists that take this idea and make it more of a metaphor, hide it in their artwork. But you need to realize as an artist that you are already being political. There's a lot, obviously, that's a debated topic, because there are some artists that say they're not political, but it's inherently, just by the fact that you are an artist, you are already being political. So I encourage you to understand that and find ways to keep pushing that idea a little bit farther every time you put something on a piece of paper or make a sculpture or have a conversation. Understand that. All right. So as well, I do want to mention, I recorded this whole podcast hour. I've been talking to this microphone for over an hour already, because it's going to be a decently long one today. And it didn't record. I got like 43 seconds of it. So I'm watching the clock, the recording thing. I must have turned it off. And so I'm going to try my best to do it again. But I'm the type as well, when I'm always best the first time out the gate. The first time I say something, it's the best. But when I have to reiterate it, I start to second guess myself. I start to think like, oh, what did I say last time? And so I'm going to try to forget everything I said. Just hopefully it'll be a fresh conversation for me, and I'll just go for it and we'll see what happens. I just wanted to give you a little behind the scenes on this. Okay, so for those of you that might be new here, I'm an artist, art professor. Last academic year, I taught at Northwest Missouri State University. I'm done. I'm officially no longer employed by Northwest Missouri State University. I'm looking for another position, which I'll talk about more in a second. I got my last 2 academic years ago, I was teaching at San Diego State University. I got 3 academic years before that, I graduated with my MFA from San Diego State University. And then many years before that, I graduated from the University of Washington. So at San Diego State, I basically interdisciplinary, but with an emphasis, I guess you could say, or influence, it would be a better way to put it, an influence of graphic design. With the University of Washington, I was there getting a fiber arts degree, so BFA in fiber arts. So both of those campuses are also 2 campuses that are involved in active protests for divestment and for awareness around a free Palestine and the stop of the genocide that's happening. So I'm proud of my alma maters for that. So thank you. I don't know where each of them are. I don't think there's an encampment at San Diego State, but there was a day of protest. At least there was a moment. University of Washington, there is currently an encampment. However, yeah, I don't know what state it's in, right? Like at what, if it's being threatened with, what's the word I'm looking for? Police action being taken upon them, or if it's a little more quiet. I know Seattle is a pretty liberal place. However, just like New York's a pretty liberal place, the institutions are not necessarily as liberal as we're learning. And so whether or not they're going to allow them to stay there or what's happening with police action, I don't know. So awesome though, University of Washington and San Diego State. I'm glad the students of the spaces are raising their voices, which is important. Couple things. So here we go. Let's get into this a little bit here. I'm going to start off with some updates, and then we're going to get into the meat of the show today, which is the meat of the show is going to be just my reactions to what's happening in our world right now with these college protests, because it just makes sense. It's the work. I mean, it's where both, I guess I'll just say this now, both the fact that I'm an art professor on a university, in the university space, and that I'm an artist, and my work is, as I just mentioned, directly related to political ideas and activism. It's just, even though I'm not in one of the campuses that are having the encampments and the protests happening, I'm out in the middle of Missouri right now, waiting to do my exhibition, which is coming up. I'll be driving to Tennessee in a couple of days, which we'll talk about more in a second. I feel like I have some degree, if not much, at least a little bit of a space, of a ability, of a platform, of a reason to talk about what's happening, because it's related to both. It's very closely related to who I am, artist and an art educator, professor, which is what's going on right now. So that's what we'll be talking about. That's going to be the bulk of the conversation. But before we get into that, a couple updates. So I just mentioned I'll be driving to Tennessee State University, Hiram Van Gordon Gallery. I'm going to be at their gallery for basically all of May. I'm going to be driving down in 2 days. Sunday morning, I'll be driving there. It takes about 10 hours to drive there. I like road trips. It'll be fun. I'm going to get up really early. And basically, starting on Sunday for the next month, I'm going to be putting a lot of stuff out on social media. So follow along on social media with this adventure that I'm going to be on. Every day of the exhibition, I'm going to be doing a recap post of what I did each day, because my exhibition is going to be drawing 72 drawings of Justin Jones and 69 drawings of Justin Pearson, 141 drawings total. Doing them in the gallery, live streaming them as I'm doing them, 10 drawings a day for the most part, with one day doing 11. And then we'll see. There might be some reasons to do more, but the goal essentially is to do 10 a day. But I don't know. There's some conversation around the schedule and different things. So if I can double up or get more done in certain days, and if there's some reason where I can't make it to the gallery, that'll be fine, because I'll have a space there for certain days. But it's only 14 days long, the performance part of it. Every day, the goal would be to be there every day for 14 days in a row, starting basically, I want to start at 9 a.m. I think, because I'm going to be so amped. I'm just going to be ready to go. I'm going to probably be getting up super early. And so I just want to be able to get there as early as I can and just start working, so I'm not working late into the night. But I'll just address that with the gallery curator when I'm there and see how that'll all work out. I'm hoping that I can just have access. I can just get there and just open the gallery. If I'm the first one there, I'll open the gallery and get it started, but we'll see how it goes. So hopefully if you're in Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee, you'll come to the gallery and be a part of the conversation with me, and come to the closing reception, which will be on the 30th. If you're not in Nashville, Tennessee, then follow along on social, but especially on YouTube, youtube.com/thezimvideo, because I'll be live streaming starting on whatever, what's the date? I don't know. Let me see if I can pull my calendar up again real quick. Starting on the 13th of May, ending on the 27th will be the performance part of it. And I don't know, maybe I'll start early if I'm ready. Maybe we'll see. We'll see what they think. Because I mean, it's only going to take us 1, 2, possibly 3 days. I'm getting there on the 6th, start installing on the 6th, 7th, and possibly be done installing on the 8th. So then it'll be the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th of just hanging out in Nashville. And I'm not much of a hangouter person. I like to be doing things. So maybe they'll let me start early. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see what they say. I won't mind doing that. All right. And then another thing I wanted to mention. So come through or just be a part of it. You'll be hearing a lot about it. I'll just be spamming. Basically starting Sunday, I'll be spamming out on my platforms, tagging people and trying to get the word out. I'm hoping that the goal would be to get the word out while I'm doing it, that people will come interview me, report on it, share it out. That's the goal. Get more awareness through other platforms. Reminder as well, or I might as well mention the schedule for the podcast as a whole. This is basically the last podcast until the end of May, June, the start of June. I think it's June 7th will be the next podcast after this, because I'll be doing my exhibition all this month. So yeah, this is it for a little bit. I'll probably do one more in June to recap the exhibition and maybe talk a little bit about my last academic year, but I'm not sure. I'm going to leave that as a little bit of a teaser. When I'm ready to talk about the academic year as a whole, maybe I'll do it. I don't know. There's part of me, there's definitely things I want to say in kind of like this conclusive kind of, exit kind of conclusion of the experience. So I'll try to make a space for that, and I'll try to think about what it is I want to say. And I'll also encourage you to, if you have any specific questions about my experience, please ask them. That'll really help me get that kind of thought process going on how to talk about the last academic year and the experience of working at Northwest Missouri. So that'll be really helpful. But I kind of want to be a little systematic about it. Maybe I'll write myself some notes, like as I'm thinking about it now, just thinking about like, what was the art school like? What was the impression of the art school? What was the impression of the students? What was the impression of, the area? And and I know I've sprinkled that stuff in throughout my podcast that I've done. So you can definitely, listen back, but it'll just be nice to have it as a consolidated, hour conversation or so. So I'll keep you posted on that. But of course, like I said, if you could ask me some questions, that could really help. So the best way to do that is to find the podcast on YouTube and post on any of them. It doesn't have to be this one. It could be any one of the Art Professor podcasts. Just post a unique comment. Don't post on someone else's comment. Post a unique comment, and then I'll get it. I'll see it, and I'll be able to respond to it. All right. So that's the exhibition. Last thing about it is I did get a parking pass. I mentioned last week I was worried about that whole situation, but I've gotten at least the parking pass to get there for the first time. I suppose it'll be good for the whole month. I'm also getting they're trying to get me an ID card or an ID for the event. So that'll make it possibly easier for me to get it on and off campus without it being a problem, and getting into the facilities, hopefully without it being a problem. So we'll keep track of that. I'll let you know how that goes. So that's that. I think I covered it. That's the exhibition. It's coming up. I've been talking about it forever, so I'm excited. I am excited about it. So we'll see how it goes. And I'll talk more about my excitement and apprehension about it in the next little section, because we're going to be talking about protests and politics and things, and my work is just right in that space. So next up, we have a little bit of the last, so I'm officially no longer employed by Northwest Missouri State University. However, the way schools work, you probably know this already, when you teach for 9 months, most of the time, and I think you might be able to pick how this works, but I think 99% of professors, teachers pick it to their salary gets distributed over a 12-month cycle versus just the 9 months that they're working. So I'm still getting paid for my job, but I'm not officially done working there. And because I'm officially done, they've already cut off my email access, which I knew was happening, but until it actually happened, it just didn't hit me correctly the right way, because it is honestly really frustrating to have email access cut off so quickly, because there's gonna be things there might be things, I don't know. It feels like it'd be worth leaving the email access open for longer, so that any final communication that needs to happen with the school can happen easier, because it'll be in their, servers, email servers, where they, with these kind of institutions, if you're trying to email out, sometimes it gets filtered out and it doesn't necessarily make it through all the time. So, but if you're emailing within the institution, it'll just get directly to where it needs to go. And then it's a nice thing as well, whenever I'm typing in the email, because I'm in the institution, it auto populates what it thinks I'm looking for, which it won't do that now. I'll have to actually know the email addresses of places that I probably want to email. The one thing that I know I want to email them after the exhibition, I'm going to invite a bunch of my former faculty and peer and colleagues over for breakfast, and I'll just have to hunting around for their emails versus just being able to type their names in and have it happen. So luckily I haven't deleted my email, all the emails I've gotten. I haven't deleted the account off my email host thing on my desktop, so I can find emails that way. But yeah, anyways, that was a little bit frustrating, because I've been out of San Diego State for over almost a year now, almost a year, I think, and I still have access to the San Diego State University email and everything related to it. So it's like they allow it for at least a year. I'll probably be getting a notice soon that I'm about to be cut off of that one too, but that's that. Anyways, that's what's going on there. And then I mentioned last week as well, the ID card. So they shut off your email right away and they take your ID card, which is frustrating, because I wanted to keep the ID card for a souvenir. So I was going to mention one last thing before we get into the meat of the podcast today is where am I going to work next year? Still don't know, but I did apply to 2 new places. DePaul, which is in Illinois, or is it Indiana, I think, and then Oakland University in Michigan, which I would really like that position, because it's perfect. It would be exactly what I want. It's in Michigan. And I might be able to, there's a lot of situations about that will be really good. And I've already gotten, so the way it typically works is you apply. If they read your application and they like it, they'll request the letters of recommendation from your references. And they've already requested, the same day I applied, they requested one later that day, they received one for it. So maybe they read it right away. Maybe they're one of those, because of where we are in the timeline, maybe because of where we are, they might be at a position like Northwest Missouri was when they were hiring, where they hired really fast. So they might be like, let's just get this. If this person seems cool, let's just put them on the list and get them in here and get it going and be done with it. So fingers crossed. I don't know. I'd really love that. That position seems perfect for what I'm looking for. It's a graphic design position. So yeah, there's a lot of really cool ones that I've applied to, but I haven't got emailed from any of them yet. Got a couple notices that I've gotten recommendation letters requested, but nobody's then followed up and said, we want this guy in our college. So far I've applied to 26 schools. 3 of them have notified me that I'm no longer in consideration. So we're down to, what, 23? Anyways, all right, cool. All right, let's get into this again. So basically what I wanted to do today is just talk about my reactions to what's happening because of the genocide that's happening in Palestine, because of the student protests happening on our campuses, because of our political response, our national response to it. Most of it was inspired by the political protest, by the anti-war protests on the college campuses. And I wanted to do, this week, I've been posting a lot about it on my TikTok account, but mostly just resharing other people's posts and adding my own. Like I duet things and add a photo or video next to it of my own thoughts. And then every once in a while I might do a individual one where I actually talk to the people, the audience, if there is anybody that wants to hear me talk. But I tried to do this. I tried to do this like this week, and I just wasn't feeling. It wasn't coming out right because I wasn't able to be concise with it in a way that I thought would be appropriate for a TikTok post. And so I was like, why don't I just do it on my podcast? Why don't I just make it my podcast? Because it allows me to be a little more free flowy with it. I'm not worried. And then I can edit it down and make a little, edit for TikTok and social media. But I'm not thinking about it as that to begin with. So I'm not worried about how concise it is. So that's what I decided to do. So that's what we're doing. And then like I've already said, it relates because this is what my work's about. This is what I'm doing. I'm an activist with my artwork, and I want to be supportive of being on the right side of history. And so here we are. So I have this bullet point list. It's not in any particular order, but I think it's in a pretty good order because I've already done this once and I liked what happened. So we'll see if we can get somewhat close to what happened before with the ideas. So I'm just going to jump into this and we'll see how it goes. My first bullet point is the oppressed have become the oppressors. So it honestly just boggles my mind a little bit that the state of Israel was set up as partly a reaction to the Holocaust. And the Holocaust was the genocide and ethnic cleansing of the Jewish people in Nazi Germany. And now the state of Israel is doing the same thing to the people of Palestine that was done to them. And it just honestly, it just totally blows my mind. The reaction I have to it, there's a couple reactions. First, there's the idea of the movie The Dark Knight, if you've seen it, Batman. Harvey Dent, the district attorney, said a line, "You can either die the hero or live long enough to become the villain." And there's something about that line that it's like the state of Israel has become the villain. And then another one that comes up for me is the Hunger Games. When I think about the end of the Hunger Games, where when they beat the Capitol, the resistance beat the Capitol, who was the Coin? The President Coin wanted to repeat the Hunger Games on the people of the Capitol. And it was just like, no. And it feels like that's what's happening with this whole situation. It's like, when can we just say enough is enough? When can we live peacefully with each other? It makes me think about, as well, the other idea that I keep thinking about is how, like in America, we have not addressed our history in an appropriate, healthy way. Like we still have like a PTSD of being a slave-owning society. I mean, it's still within our systematic oppression, systematic racism, the incarceration system in our society is just the new version of slavery. I mean, there's so many things we have not accounted for and addressed in our own history as a country. And so we're living in this kind of PTSD cycle of dealing with these issues that we're not dealing with. It's like when you don't deal with an issue, it festers and becomes a cancer. And so that's what it feels like the state of Israel has done. I don't know. It just makes me believe that they haven't fully reflected on their own being the victims of ethnic cleansing and a genocide. They have not forgiven that experience in a way. They haven't, whatever it might be, so it's causing them to do it then on someone else. I mean, that's what happens when a child is beat by their parents. They go to school and beat up kids, beat up people. It's like 9 times out of 10, more often than not, just the mental kind of aspect of it, the mental health aspect of what happens to you is how you react to the world. And the state of Israel is in a mental health crisis with itself. And they haven't, potentially, that's what it feels like. There was something else. Okay, this is what I was talking about when I mentioned something else about the idea, like why can't when the state of Israel was established, because it was it's a fairly new country, right? It's a fairly new space that was placed upon the Palestinian land, and they took over and suppressing and oppressing the Palestinians. But then the Palestinian land was also, there's some association with British colonizing. So it's a very weird and interesting history. And then, of course, the Ottoman Empire. There's just a lot that happened in that area that it's hard to just pinpoint who it belongs to. So I just wish we could get past that and say, we're all people. Let's all live here together peacefully. It doesn't matter who it belongs to. Let's just all live together. Let's be where it is. Maybe there is more of a division. Maybe, international courts or whatever get involved and they make a better, Israel gets this space and Palestine gets this space. But why Israel controls Palestine, I don't understand. Why aren't we supporting Palestine? Anyways, that's just a much bigger conversation that would take a history scholar to help me understand, political and history scholar. Next bullet point. The conservative talking point of the liberal takeover of education is debunked. So a few months ago, not that long ago, a year ago, a couple years ago, ever since that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? A kind of misrepresenting the term being woke, the idea of being woke, started to become a conservative talking point. There was also this, within that, there was institutions of higher education are too liberal, they're too woke. There's too much diversity and inclusion ideas. There's too much critical race theory conversations. There's too much of this. There's too much wokeness happening. And so it started to become this kind of talking point of, higher education is just indoctrinating people to be liberals, But that's clearly been debunked, because it's clear that the conservative ideology still wields the levers of power within these institutions. These institutions are not bastions of liberal spaces. They are, for all intents and purposes, just capitalistic ideology. They're just, as long as the powers that be keep making the money, that's what they want. That's all they care about. So when we're up to a situation like we're in now, where the students, the people of the institution, want some progress to be made, want this divestment from the, industrial war complex. They're like, nope, we don't want that, because it means that we would get less power. We want it just to be status quo as it's always been. We want to keep these relationships in place because they give us money, we give them money, and we hold the power over the students and other people that want something better for our society. So the conservative talking point of the liberal takeover of education is debunked. Where are the conscientious objectors? So, as we've been seeing, if you're watching anything, even mainstream media, but if you're especially watching alternative media and getting the actual source of this, you're actually seeing it in real time. Where are the conscientious objectors of it within these riot cops and the police officers? Where are the ones that are willing to stand up for the protests? Where are the ones? There's not enough, and we don't see them. Maybe they're behind the scenes. Maybe they do bring up their objections before they get sent out, or maybe they're just told not to go because it's like, all right, you're not going, but all the rest of these people will go and be the riot cops for the situation. But it just seems so bizarre to me that none of them are willing to stand up to say this is wrong. I mean, we've seen it play out. They're educated people. We've seen this already time and time again. And it's never, your students are never on the wrong side of history. Protests like this on college campuses are never on the wrong side of history, especially when, and pretty much always when, law enforcement gets brought in to try to suppress it. If law enforcement doesn't suppress the protests that might happen on a college campus, like we saw with the white supremacy marches that have happened on some college campuses, they do nothing. People bring weapons, they do nothing. But when it comes to actually wanting progress in our society and they get suppressed, then you know what side of history you're going to be on or not, depending on how you're interacting with that space. So where are the conscientious objectors? I don't know. It just seems like there should, I wish more of them, more people in those spaces, in those law enforcement and political spaces would stand up and say, this is wrong. The politicians are sort of doing it sometimes, but the people that are actually there, boots on the ground, need to turn around and go, no, you do not beat that student. Do not pull them off like that. Do not hurt them, because this is not wrong. And it's like, thinking about it too, why are they not there to protect the peace? They're only there to oppress. And it may, I mean, as you dig deeper into this, you understand that they aren't there to protect the peace. They're only there to maintain the status quo. They're only there to maintain the corporate, capitalist, institutional ideology. Police are showing more and more through all the protests and all the movements that have happened over the last few years that they are only there to maintain the status quo of the elite in our society. They are not there to protect the people. What would be the best situation? What would be the ideal? What would be what you think they're there for? Sure, they could be around the protest, but be there to protect the peace. Be there to allow the encampments to protest. Be there to allow, but essentially what they needed to be there for was a few nights ago when the Zionists came to UCLA and started to attack the peaceful protesters. That's what they should have been there to stop. But no, what they're there for is to amplify the violence. They are the ones causing the violence. There's no violence. It's like, I also heard this other TikTok, somebody say, this idea that if they just didn't even do anything, the movement might have fizzled out. But because they are there, they're radicalizing more people to go, we need to stand up to this. We need to come out for this. Because they're amplifying the violence. They're the ones doing it. Just frustrating. All right, so this next one is a sort of a controversial idea, but I was thinking about when I was planning to do this, what I'm doing now is sort of like an independent TikTok idea. But I was wavering on this point itself because I didn't want it to come across the wrong way. But somebody else on TikTok, which I'm going to play for you, said it in a way that makes me feel confident to also say this idea. But it's basically that there needs to be more white faces involved on the front lines of the protest. So I'll let her, she goes by, on TikTok, she goes by Champurdees Nuts, ChampurradeeZNUTS. And she was on, I'll also link up the actual video. I'm going to edit this down so it'll be her introduction and then the point of the video that I want, that is what we're talking about with white allyship within these protests. So I'll play the video, but I'll link up the entire video so you can check out the entire one on TikTok if you want. But essentially, she kind of confirmed this kind of concept because she was there at the UCLA protest. She got arrested. She talks about her experience being arrested, and she talked about what it was like for her. And there's this one section in here that confirms what I was thinking. Because when I was looking on social media and the media as a whole, it didn't feel to me like there were enough white faces in the crowd of the protest. We saw there was a lot of white people around, but it didn't feel like they were actively involved because, as we know, in our society, especially when it comes to police intervention and law enforcement intervention, white people do not get abused as much as people of color. So to have white people be a barrier between them, law enforcement, and the other people of color could go a long way. And so this is this person's experience with that idea that I wanted to share because it kind of really resonated with me and what I've been thinking about it.
These are 5 things I wish I would have known before getting arrested at the UCLA protest last night. What's up? My name is Liz. I'm now 24. I graduated from UCLA in the class of 2021, and I was at the protest last night, May 2nd into the early morning of May 3rd on the front lines. Number 1, expect the white folks to go home. I wish, the plan is white folks put your bodies at the front of the lines, and that should 100% be the case. If you're a white person or white presenting person, as I am, your body should be in the front because they undoubtedly treat our brown brothers, sisters, and kin way differently than they treat us. But what's wild is around midnight is when I was like, damn, where the white folks at? It's brown folks all in the front, and that's fucked. And I think it's because it's convenient for white people to be inconvenienced by being their lead, inconvenienced at waiting till 3 a.m., 5 a.m. for police intervention to come in and berate everybody. So, number 1, encourage your white friends to go. Encourage white folks to be at the front and not be instigators, but rather as barriers for people of color. Proactively, I wish I would have done more of that. But then once they're there, use your positionality to put yourself in front.
One thing that she didn't mention that I would like to know more about is her experience after. So she got arrested, and then she's now within 24 hours of being arrested, already back recording another TikTok. So how did that work? Did she have to post bail? Did she, I don't know, or was it more of just pulling them away from the area and then holding them for a little bit and letting them go? I don't know, because there's obviously across the country, there's a lot of protesters that are having to post bail and those kind of concepts. So I don't know. I don't know what that looks like. Next point. October 7th is a disingenuous argument. So anybody that's still using October 7th as any kind of justification for what's happening is being deliberately ignorant and disingenuous to the everything, because October 7th was a result of previous situations of oppression by the state of Israel. And after October 7th, the scale at which the state of Israel has retaliated on the people of Gaza, supposedly trying to confront Hamas, is disproportionate, grossly disproportionate. We are well past the idea of adequate retaliation. They're now just using it as an excuse to ethnic cleanse the people of Palestine. That's all they're doing. And if you can't see that, you're being deliberately ignorant and disingenuous to this whole kind of concept. Yeah. So if you ever hear somebody say, oh, but what happened on October 7th, blah, 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 needs to be, I don't know, considered, they're just being woefully ignorant. They're being deliberately ignorant and disingenuous to the overall concept, because it's a part of the whole. It's not everything. And I'm not condoning October 7th. October 7th was terrible, but the other idea too is like, what can you trust? We've been hearing that Israel, the state of Israel itself, has lied about things that happened on October 7th, and also like we're shooting at their own people on October 7th. So it's like, was it all Hamas? And how is Hamas actually treating the whole like cooking babies stuff and all this weird stuff? It's like most of it's made up. Most of it's they're not, it's not even real, but they keep saying it. It's like, and there's just anybody that says anything related to that date on this side of, they're allowed, like Israel's allowed to do this, we have to because of October 7th. They're just being deliberately ignorant and disingenuous to everything, because they just want to be oppressive. They want to be racist. They want to be whatever it is they want to be. They just don't want to self-reflect and learn and educate themselves on the entire situation. Mainstream media is doing its hardest to control the narrative. So the one bullet point I have here, they want to say the protesters are supporting Hamas. That's like they want to keep saying that idea, but it's not the case at all. The protesters are anti-war. That's what the protesters are. Protesters are anti-war. They're also pro-Palestine, but they're not pro-Hamas. That's a whole different thing. So you gotta make sure that's understood. For a moment, I was a little bit frustrated about when the Columbia students, or the people that were at the encampment in Columbia, broke into what they renamed Hind Hall. And Hind was a child that was killed during the genocide in Palestine, in Gaza. They renamed it Hind Hall, and they broke into the hall by breaking glass, and then, there's they probably damaged a few things in getting into different rooms and getting into, making barricades and things like that so people couldn't get in. However, again, the media narrative around that idea is also disingenuous to make that idea, amplify that idea to the point where it's on equal footing of physical violence to people, physical violence to like what the riot cops are doing to the protesters. It's disingenuous to conflate those two ideas. Another talking point that I'm learning is a conservative talking point. They like to conflate things. They like to make things equal that are not equal. We see it all the time. And this goes along the lines of how just Democrat and Republicans, the talking points of media, especially, like to conflate the idea. They like to try to make them sound the same when they're not. They're not at all. It's not two sides of the same coin. Although because of this genocide issue, it's frustrating, which we're going to talk about more in a second as well. So I was frustrated about the breaking in the Hidden Hall, but I'm now, the more that I think about it, the more I'm like, you know what? That's just protests. They're protesting. It's not all going to be flowers and sunshine and rainbows. It's not at all. There's resistance that's going to happen. So it leads me to this next point, which Biden addressed the nation a couple days ago, yesterday, in the Roosevelt Room, like a 5-minute address. And it was frustrating to listen to. And another person, I'm going to share another person from TikTok's video. This person goes by What's Good English. And they summed it up nicely, what I've been thinking about. And so let's just listen to them. So, yeah, let's just listen to them.
Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest.
This is what makes me the most angry. That man is 81 years old. He should know better. He lived through a lifetime of student-led movements of public disorder, the Vietnam War, anti-apartheid in South Africa, segregation, the entirety of the civil rights movement. And time again, everyone involved in those movements was proven to be on the correct side of history. It's what went down in the history books. And now, when he is the person in the position of power after having that lifetime of information, what does he do? He gets on a microphone and says that utterly disgusting, disappointing pile of garbage. This is your legacy, bro. This is your legacy. When people are writing the history books about the Joe Biden presidency a couple decades from now, this is what you will be remembered for.
Anyone that doesn't agree with the protests can and will always find a way to make protests unlawful. It's always never at the right time. It's never in the right space. It's never the right way it's done. It's always, there's always a way to make them unlawful. And so it makes it so, going back to the Hidden Hall situation, it makes it so, as the resistance, you have to work very hard to not kind of amplify the wrong message. That's why peaceful protesting is so powerful and important. And even when you're trying to peaceful protest your hardest, the people that don't agree with you will always find a way to say you're not doing it right. And so to hear Biden say what he said without deliberately telling the nation to protect the students is really frustrating. He did mention, thankfully he did mention that all people of all different cultural backgrounds and ideology need to be felt safe. He was a little heavy-handed with the Israel side of it, but he did mention the Palestinian side and other sides of people. But he didn't address the brutality that the riot cops and those ideas are placing upon the protest. Like, the protesters broke into Hidden Hall. Fine. They're not being violent. They're not hurting people. And 90% of the protests that are happening across the country are just occupying space. It's all it is. Chanting, occupying space, making it aware that their presence is felt without hurting people. And once the riot cops, once the law enforcement gets interjected into it, I think I've already mentioned this, But they should be there to protect, make sure nobody gets hurt, not to create the violence. And that's what they're doing. And that's what it's been like throughout history. And I think I said already, but students have never been on the wrong side of history. When students are protesting like this, it's never been on the wrong side of history. And it's going to be the same here. It's going to be the same here. Which then brings me to my last point of something that I used to, and I still do, but it's in a different way now. Caution about the idea of being a single issue voter. But it feels to me very different this time. Being a single issue voter for the amount to pay on taxes, or what other ideas can a single issue, like the environment, or I don't know, gun control laws, right? There's a lot of issues around single issue voting that you're doing it wrong if you're single issue voting. You got to look at the whole picture. However, it feels to me like this situation is very different. Genocide, it's like the line of genocide makes that one issue so important, way more important, and outweighs almost everything. Human life, it's just so darn important that I don't blame at all. And I'm even considering myself, like, how am I going to be voting in 2024 presidential election because this issue is that big? Am I going to vote third party? I mean, I won't not vote, but who am I going to vote for? And my hope is Biden administration changes its position before election, changes its, and I honestly can't understand why they haven't changed their position already. I don't understand why they're so adamant about just I can't think there's a word. I don't understand why they're so in support of the state of Israel. Why they keep supporting the state of Israel when their sanctions need to be done. I mean, it's fine we were allies at one time. This is why I think this is where the age of Biden comes into play. He's not too old to be president, but he's too old to still have the ideas of when he was 38 years old, 40 years old. The world has changed. The fact that our allyship with Israel needs to change, especially because of what's happening right now. But there's been so much more that it needs to change based on. But of course we know, I don't know enough about all this. This is more research that I'll have to do, but money is what the problem is. Money. AIPAC pays for campaign donations. And they're, I guess, the Israeli lobbyist institution. And the amount of financial leverage that the state of Israel has on the American political system is making it hard for us to stand independently from it. And that's what's probably a big factor in why Biden won't change his stance at this point, because he's afraid to lose the money or something. I mean, I don't know. So I'm praying that Biden changes his stance before the election and we can not only bring in the voters that we probably lost because of this situation, but yeah, because I'm genuinely afraid of what another Trump presidency will look like. Because what I see happening is if Trump becomes president again, more things, not so much like the January 6th riot that happened, but the rejection of, election results, things like that, like governmental agencies just making a sweeping decision on an idea and then forcing our society into armed revolution. I see that the domino effect of another Trump presidency leads to an armed revolution, which I don't want to have happen. I don't want my friends and family to be have to deal with that. I don't want to have to deal with that. Because I don't think a lot of America understands that what revolution really looks like when you talk about these things. They think the power is going to stay on and clean water is still going to run and all those things. It's like shit gets crazy. Shit will get crazy. And that's what I think another Trump presidency could push us toward, is an actual armed revolution of some kind. And that wouldn't be fun. We don't want that. I'm just hoping that America's institutions have enough. I mean, the fact that the Supreme Court has become a corroded and corrupted institution that has no regard for what the actual people of America want, since it's got a conservative majority, is terrible. Hopefully, I don't know. So as a single issue voter, this is the one issue that I don't blame anybody for deciding to not vote for Biden because of this situation that we're in with this genocide. So that's basically the points that I wanted to bring up. Hopefully I did a good job of it. I feel like I did way better the first time, but that's what we're thinking about. The other, just wanted to mention as well, there are 5 colleges right now that I've heard that are in the negotiations at some point of divesting from Israel, which is awesome. Pomona College in LA, Northwestern in Chicago, Brown in Rhode Island, UC Davis, California, and Evergreen College in Washington. All 5 of those colleges are in some space of conversation about divestment. Either they agreed to it or they're at the negotiating table, but they've, the encampments are not there anymore. They're making progress. And then I've heard 2 cities, Hayward City and Richmond City, I don't know where they're located, but you can look it up on the internet if you're that interested. But 2 cities have divested from Israel. And I know it feels to me like it's never going to be a 100% divestment, because there's so, our economy is a world economy these days. Everything's tied together. There's so much that's tied together. It's really hard to do a 100% divestment from anything. So, but I'm sure there are places that are more obvious that we could make happen as a society, as a culture, as a country, as institutions. So hopefully we'll keep working toward that, because basically divestment's just, from what my interpretation, it's just it's a way to sanction Israel. It's a way to, money is so important in our global society, like I just said, our global economy, that, we can vote with our dollars. I hear, the Starbucks stocks has fallen because less people are buying stuff, partly because of they're on the list of places not to buy from because of the Israel conflict, because of the genocide. So, we can make a huge change as a society if we just focus on where we spend our money as a larger, when we make a movement toward it. If everybody just stopped buying something or paying for something, then we could make change happen quick, because it's the corporate interests that control government right now, which I hope changes eventually. We'll see. We just got to keep fighting, keep voting. So whatever you took away from today's podcast, I hope you will still register to vote. Don't not vote. There's a lot of other, the president is one thing, but the down ballot, positions, the House of Representatives, the Senates, your local elections are very, very, very important. So you got to make sure you're still showing up. So don't not vote. Maybe you don't vote for president this time, and then you have every right to do that, but make sure you're voting for all your down ballot issues as well, and positions and things, because that unfortunately is more important, but not seen as important as the presidential candidates. So keep voting, because if we have good people in all of our Senate and House of Representatives and state officials, then the president doesn't hold as much power because he can get vetoed. So keep that in mind. And he can get, impeached like he's been, like Trump was twice, but unfortunately the Senate was a Republican majority at the time, which he should have been impeached. God darn it. So anyways, all right, make sure, I don't know. Last thing I'll say too. So the last thing I do want to say, I didn't mention yet, I think I alluded to it earlier in the podcast. I'm just wondering when and if, because of the work that I'm doing, because of the stance I'm taking with being an activist, and in this political space, when will I be in a position where I might get arrested for what it is that I'm saying and doing? There was a moment, oh God, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, because I did mention this, but I don't know if it was on this podcast or the one I left out. So I'll just say it again and cut it out if I need to. There was a moment where I was started to get worried about my exhibition coming up this month, because I know I'm in an activist space, and gun reform is what the main issue is with drawing Justin Jones and Justin Pearson. But the call for gun reform and the call for the end to the genocide and the free Palestine is connected. It's all connected. It's part of the same spiritual space in a lot of ways. It's issues that are really connected together. There's not they're within the same space. So clearly, and then my work is, because it's live stream, it's because we're talking about things, because the work that I do, I write things on my drawings, I just do different things. I just know that I'm going to be having this conversation about Palestine within this kind of moment. So I got worried that the school itself would maybe not want me to do it, or something would prevent me from being able to complete this exhibition. But then I got a little bit of security around the idea, because hearing like what the president said is like these, safe spaces. Like if I'm allowed, I've been invited into this space. They know my artwork. They know what I do, if they did any research, but they know the old artwork that I share with them. They know the conversations I'm having. So this is like a sanctioned space for protest, because I do see my artwork as a form of protest. So the fact that I was allowed to do it made me feel a little more confident. Whether or not they could change their mind once they see it, and they're like, wait a second, we don't want you to voicing this opinion on our campus, they might say leave. So that would just be part of the artwork. I don't know. But I think we'll be fine. I feel pretty confident we'll be fine. So yeah, I'll keep you, but that's, part of the journey. Come along with me. Join the live streams, watch my social media, see how it plays out. All right, my friends. As always, if you have any comments for me, find one of the videos, comment on it, like I mentioned earlier. And I think that's good. So as always, be loving, kind, and patient, and we'll catch up with you again on the podcast in about a month. But of course, I'll be on YouTube live streaming my exhibition. Peace.